are you guys?
All right, so we are bringing you our midsummer episode here. I have a week off from my internship at Iowa. Avery's got a weekend at least right now, so we decided we'd get you guys our episode. We're going to bring you an update on the Cubs, Stanley Cup Finals, NBA Finals, and we're going to talk about some of the Bears OTAs. Avery, how's the summer going?
Busy as heck. But it's been good. Summer's been great. Finished 2 out of my 6 classes that I scheduled myself for the summer. So I got 4 more to go. Please pray for me. And I'm working full time again, 45 hours a week. It kind of sucks, but hey, focusing on myself kind of this summer, trying to kind of get back physically and mentally, kind of recharge during the summer. But other than that, guys, it's been a good summer. Been very sports oriented this summer, but I want to hear about your summer, man.
Also very sports oriented, very football oriented, 100%. I'm going to, you say working a full week of 40, 45 hours. Great. I'm working a solid 60, 70. I get up at 3 in the morning. I'm there by 4 setting stuff up. They got 3 different lifting groups that they go through at 6, 8, and 10. And then we're tearing stuff down, doing cleanup, and just like stocking the refuel station and whatnot. Normally get out of there around 5-ish p.m. Is about the average time getting home. So basically come back, do an hour or two of like homework that I have to do for the internship too, and go to bed.
Yeah, dude, you are living probably every football loving person's dream right now. Even if it is just an internship, but being at a major Power 5 school and working at the University of Iowa as an intern, that is incredible. What has been some of the experiences? I know you can't really go nitty gritty with it, but what are some of the experiences that you've dealt with working with these players?
Yeah, it's really strange. Just like all these names and everything, and you've heard about some of these guys, and you have this certain like image and whatnot of them in your head. Like you hold them to such a high standard, whatever. And then, getting there, working with them, whatever. It's like they're dudes in college. The same way like we were friends in college, same way like in high school, we were on a sports team together. Like it feels like so much more of a genuine, just like casual atmosphere. Like they're all just dudes playing on a football team, like training right now. And I don't see much of like practice stuff, truly. So I'm sure that's a little bit different. Like I'm sure you can get some distinction there, but at least weight room wise and like field work wise and stuff, like I don't know. It's super super cool and it's awesome. Like when you're thinking about it, and then when you're there, it just feels so much more casual and just like normal. Like yeah, this is just a football team going through the training. Like no big deal.
For sure. The distinction between Division 3 and Division 1, it's got to be a complete different ball game. I mean, you've done both now. You got experience in both.
That is
Like,
surprised. That is one of the things that surprised me a little bit. Is certain players you can tell, certain players you're kind of like, oh yeah, like there's a D1 guy right there, just huge, fast, whatever, blah blah blah. But honestly, if you were to take like 2 random teams, like one Division 1 team and one Division 3 team, like a decent Division 3 team, and had them all intermixed in like a lineup, just based off of that, purely based on like here's a lineup, point the Division 3 players out versus the Division 1 players, I don't think you could tell. Like I no, I couldn't
really?
tell. Maybe like I said, certain ones you'd be like, okay, you're like super short or something. You're probably Division 3, or like this dude is massive and jacked. Like you're probably Division 1. But for the most part, like a lot of kind of the mid pack guys, like honestly, like I don't think you'd really be able to tell. Like without actually seeing them like play football or like train or like do any drills, anything like that, just visually looking at them, no. Like they all just look like, like I said, college guys. Like half the team I coach at Cornell and stuff, like look similar to some of these guys in Iowa that I'm training. It's just it really really makes you think about the aspect of the skill and just like the level of football that these guys understand and play to. Like it's not purely pure. Like genetics plays a good chunk of it, I'm sure, but at the same time, like it really does come down to just a huge football skill do you have it kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. That dude, and that's awesome that your experience. What's like one of the best, most like experience that you've done so far this summer that has just like kind of changed your like brain chemistry and like, wow, this is how it's done.
Like one of my favorite things.
Yeah,
Uh, I guess just going through the lifting groups and seeing the programming and stuff and like seeing the different drills. I'm sitting there kind of like, watching these drills happen and stuff. And because we do see some practices too, once a week instead of like lifting training, they actually do what's called skills and drills where their position coaches are with them and it's actually like a football practice that we're at. So I always follow the running backs since I coach running backs and I'm like sitting there like, all right, they're doing this drill, they're doing that drill, like just kind of picking up on drills and what they do in training. And it's super similar to just, like what we do. Like I said, even just like high school programs, like they don't do anything crazy in the weight room, like they clean, they snatch, they bench, they squat, like they do standard stuff. There's some fun accessory stuff that they throw in, but it's somewhat simplistic programming. They train like any football player would train at any level. It's just, you know, the guys they are. So I think seeing those similarities is kind of cool. I did pick up on a few new drills that I'm going to implement for our backs and stuff too, but I'm learning a ton right now. Like it's a huge learning process. Just seeing everything that they do, I'm just kind of like taking mental note of everything going on. Like okay, like later on when I'm a strength coach or even just like coaching football still, like just picking up on little things here and there that I want to implement in whatever program I'm working in next.
for sure. And like, so seeing like these big stars that like have graduated from Iowa and they've came back and like, are you starstruck? Because I know for me, I would be starstruck. Or like I see like a player that was like an all pro last year and just seeing them there and you're like, oh God. And you're on a first name basis with these guys.
A
And
little
that's
bit. I don't know the guys that have graduated as well as obviously the players that like are currently there that I see every day and stuff. But yeah, it was a little surprising. I didn't know that like NFL guys just casually came back to college to train and stuff over the summer. Iowa actually has a locker room in the weight room that's called the NFL locker room. And literally, they have a specific locker room for those guys to come back and train while they're in their off-season stuff. So yeah, like Linderbaum, Jack Campbell, Riley Moss, a few other guys. Like they've just kind of been back and around. And like I said, I'm a little bit starstruck sometimes with some of them, but also like I said, I don't like interact with them as much as I do like the actual players that are in the program that like we're really working with. So I think that's where a part of that starstruck barrier is still up a little bit because with all the players, it's like no, you're not starstruck anymore. You work with them every day, like you get to know them, and like you're going through this training summer together and whatnot. So it's like that wall breaks down, and they just like I said, become another guy, another relationship that you have. Some of these NFL players, yeah, it's a little more starstruck still because I'm not working directly with them all the time. They're just kind of around in the same place as me, and say hey and help them out a little bit here and there. But so I'd say, yeah, it is a little. It's super awesome. I love seeing it. I love just like recognizing people in person. Like, oh hey,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I bet you've met so many, different people from different avenues of your life just with this like internship. It's a hell of an opportunity to get.
the
Um,
biggest thing I'm excited for right now is actually watching like Iowa football this summer or this season. I'm so pumped to actually watch the season happen because I actually know all the players and everything. So everyone that like touches the ball, get their name announced on TV, or just is on the field, like I'm gonna know who they are and stuff, and be like have an actual idea of them and their personalities a little bit while I'm watching. So I'm super pumped for that. But let's get this episode rolling with what we got to talk about today. So we will get into it, starting out with Cubs Corner. Avery, give us a Cubs update.
yeah, guys. So, well, thank you, Coach Bolin, for that first like 10 minutes of telling about the summer. But yeah, the Cubs right now they are 38-42, and we're fourth in the NL Central. So we've been up and down. We're still kind of in the middle of the pack of the NL Central. Still a lot of baseball to go. I don't think the Cubs are a playoff team this year. I mean, we've been pretty average throughout. Like sometimes we'll break even and be like, 36 and 36 at one point. I definitely don't think we will be a playoff team this year, but we're young. And like the cool thing with the Cubs, I've watched a decent amount of Cubs games this year, is when they win convincingly. Like it's not like a close game and we squeak it out. It's like a 10-1, 8-1. It's just they can't put it together every single week. And I feel like that's like a common trend with Chicago teams. Like when we win big. But when we lose, like it's like we lose more frequently than we should.
So arguably, what you're saying is they do not win the close games right now.
Yeah, they
Because if you're only winning games by a big margin, to me that means one thing. When it comes down to a close game, I know it's baseball, but when it comes down to that fourth quarter, like you got to grit it out. If you aren't winning some games by like close margins, you don't win the close games. That's a problem that should be looked into. But
100%. Well, and there was a really cool game. The Cubs played in London, and it was one of the very first games in London in like the last 15 years. They played the Cardinals, and they played a 3-game series, and Cubs won 2-1 on the series. So it's always nice to beat your bitter rivals and like the St. Louis Cardinals, especially overseas like that.
especially since they don't get a lot of baseball, so it's like now
Right.
forever all those Europeans are going to be like, oh, baseball? I know the Cubs, they're pretty good, right?
Yeah, yeah, and they're like, well, they're not really that good, but yeah, the Chicago Cubs. But yeah, I'm excited to see this. It's a young nucleus. It's kind of weird because the Chicago Cubs and the Bears, they are very similar. They have a young star. Like they're a budding team that in a couple of years, yeah, there's a potential there. And so being a Chicago fan, I know you're a Cubs fan. You've granted that the past couple of years, kind of grandfathered it in. And being a Bears fan, we got a lot to look forward to for being like Chicago fans in the future. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of all I got for the Chicago Cubs. But I want to talk about the College World Series. It was in my home, well, not my hometown, but my town that I live in, Omaha, Nebraska. It happens every single year. And it was the LSU Tigers versus the Florida Gators. And I will tell you what, I went to game 3 of the LSU Tigers, and I'll have to post some TikTok about us being, because I got a couple of videos and like on Instagram of me being at game 3. And it was kind of like a last second thing. Me and my wife, we were sitting at home. I had a buddy that asked if I wanted to go, and I was like, nah, it's gonna be too hot for my son. And then like right before game time, like the tickets were like 21 bucks. I was like, fuck it, let's go. Like, when can you say you went to a elimination game of the College World Series? Like, I mean, yeah, I probably make it to another one here in the future, but that atmosphere, man, was insane. LSU fans literally overtook Omaha, Nebraska. Yeah,
um, LSU, what are they doing down there? They have won so many championships in the last few years. I mean, girls basketball team just did it this year. Baseball
yep.
just did it this year. Football won
2020.
the conference, didn't they? Their
Yeah,
SEC. So like, what is LSU? They're just rocking with something else right now. It's insane.
yeah, 3 championships in 3 years. Joe Burrow in 2020, LSU Tigers. 2023, Angel Reese, LSU Tigers, and then this year the LSU baseball team. They took and they have this pitcher, Skeen. He is the best pitcher in college baseball right now. And so, like, seeing him come out and perform, and like, I thought like a lot of LSU fans probably would have left because they got demolished in game 2. So game 1, the Tigers won 3-2. Close game, that's your normal typical baseball score. Game 2, they lost 24-4 against Florida. 24-4. They lost by 20 runs in game 2. And then they come back the next night, literally the next night, and they kill Florida 18-4. Like, so these Tigers, man, they're resilient. And I feel like that's a common trend down at LSU. Like, they've always been resilient the last couple of years. They bounce back. They know how to bounce back. And I think that's just like a sports culture that they built down there. It's pretty cool to see.
So tell me then, what contributed to the max amount of jello shots more? The sorrow of losing by such a margin or the victory of coming back after? When were more jello shots bought?
No, okay, yeah, it was bought throughout the whole series. So like it was bought like so there was so many ups and downs with it. Yeah, there's this place in Omaha right across from Charles Schwab Field. It's called Rocco's. They do Jello shot challenges every single year. LSU had 69,000 Jello shots.
That
69
is
blew
absolutely insane.
it's insane. There was a lot of drunk tigers. Let's say that. There's a lot of drunk tigers in Omaha. Um, but yeah, no, I think it's just like the ups and downs of any sport fandom. Like you drink when you're happy and you drink when you're sad. And I think they were like, well, we're gonna drink regardless. And it's funny because me and my buddy Rich, we haven't had him on the pod. You know him. Uh, he's a big Tiger fan, big LSU fan. We were talking on the phone, and he's like, "I don't know, man. I think Louisianans can outdrink Iowans." And we had like a good 15-minute conversation of that. We're both just like a drunk state. And and we're like, well, there's nothing to do in Louisiana. I'm like, well, there's nothing to do in
There is
Iowa.
so
And
much more to do in Louisiana than there is in Iowa.
I know,
Also, I would have to
sure.
argue that Wisconsinites have both of us beat there. They
Oh,
literally have the
100%.
most bars per capita in Wisconsin. But I remember having the same argument when we were abroad and we were in Wales. We had the big UK versus USA, like who's going to outdrink who. And I think we actually did one night where all the Americans that were abroad kind of did like a, or we wanted to. I don't know if it ever truly came to fruition, but we had one night where we started with like a, okay, tallying off like on the American side and the UK side, like who's gonna drink more tonight. We got boom, 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 boom. But why is that such a thing of pride? Like, hey, I can get piss poor drunk and just, like, why is that a thing people like want for their state?
I never understood it. I mean, when you drink that much, you just act like a fool. But uh, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just like that. I think it comes back to like a nationality thing. I think it's like, all right, yeah. Because you compete in everything you do, right? Like, I feel like if you don't have like a competitive nature in you, like you compete in everything, and even if that's drinking, you're gonna compete. And so I think it's just kind of that atmosphere. But I'll tell you what, man, like that LSU game, there was only 10 Florida fans. I swear, I only saw 10 Florida fans in that whole stadium. The rest, it was purple and
Which that's
gold.
surprising
And
given that they won the second game by such a huge margin. You think
right,
more of them would be like, bro, we could have this. We might take this. Let's stick around.
yeah, and that's what I think. I think they thought the game was in
Mm.
the bag, and so they just like let's just get back early or something. But even I was like talking to a couple people in the stands, and they're like, "Yeah, no, it's been LSU all week," and I'm like, "All right, well, go Tigers." And when they won, it was funny because people were spraying
Oh
beer all
yeah.
over. And so, and Liam, my son, gets doused with beer, and it's just like, oh crap! All right, but it was a good time.
Um, yeah, that would not be a fun side. Be like, as a dad, hey, quit getting your beer all over my kid. He ain't gonna have this for another at least 2 years.
Right? you know, I was, a part of me was like that, but and then a part of me is like, fuck it, they just won the national championship. Crazy,
Yeah,
go crazy.
like, can you blame them? Just like, all right, Liam, this is the first and only instance with alcohol you're gonna have until you're a teen
Right?
at least.
But
But moving on from baseball, we got some other championship games to talk about as well. One of them being the Stanley Cup Finals. We had the Panthers playing the Golden Knights, and the Golden Knights won the series 4-1. Their final game was 9-3, so they also had a pretty big win margin for a hockey game, just kind of blowing out the Panthers there in that last game. I know you didn't watch it, and neither did I. Therefore, I have nothing else to say about this. Do
I
you?
nothing, nothing at all.
Yep, didn't think so. So we'll go straight into the NBA then with Beyond the Arc and give you our playoff update there. The Nuggets played the Heat, and the Nuggets won it 4-1. Their last game was 94-89. It's actually a super low scoring game as far as basketball goes. That was a little crazy. Um, I watched one game in this series. I only had the time to watch one. It made me super sad. It was game four, actually. And I was very upset that the Heat had won Game 3 because it meant that I couldn't watch Game 4 and at least pretend it might be the last game in the series that I would get to enjoy. But it is what it is. What do you have to say about the Nuggets and the Heat?
Yeah, no. Well, one, I just want to give the Heats like they were an 8 seed and they made it to the NBA championship. So that's mad props. Like they
For
were
sure.
in the play-in game, like seconds away of getting eliminated by the Chicago Bulls, and like they come out and they just rolled the table and they beat my Bucks. Unfortunately, we've talked about that many times on this pod. But yeah, just seeing them even in the championship, mad respect for the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler. But speaking of Jimmy Butler, he went non-existent in the finals. Like, how are you going to be this star of the team and you don't show up in the biggest series of your life? Like, and that's the hard part with Jimmy Butler because like people were starting to talk about him being one of the best premier players in the league,
People being
and
Avery.
yeah, people being me. But no, even analysts and like there was a lot of talk there of like Jimmy Butler and
Nikola.
Nikola, yeah, Jokic is a man amongst boys, and he is. It's crazy that he was drafted in the second round. It is nuts that he was drafted in the second round. And but to see what he's done for Denver and that whole city, like he's royalty there. He's royalty in the NBA now. Like he's
Not only was he drafted in the second round, but his name wasn't even said.
right.
They aired a Taco Bell commercial when this man was being picked. Like, talk about disrespect.
Right. And so like this guy yeah, and it's fun to see this because it brings like he's an old school basketball player. Like you think of Jokic and you're like he belongs in the 90s when like great centers and like power forwards that was like their time because this is the shooting era because of Steph Curry, right? This is the shooting era in the NBA. And well, Jokic turned back the clock on that. And the Nuggets, they have never won an NBA championship until this series, and he's got to be the number. He's the best number 15 to ever play for the Nuggets.
He definitely he might turn back the clock a little bit as like a center getting the job done, but also like you said, we're in the shooting era and big man can shoot. Like
Yeah,
he drained plenty of threes throughout this playoff berth. Like don't think that one sec like you aren't seeing that in the 90s. Like that
no,
is completely modern era. Like yeah, he's a big man. He's playing the true center like the olden days might do, but at the same time, he has adapted to this new era of hey, you got to throw it up beyond the arc sometimes, and he can hit it.
yeah, and he is just really fun to watch. Slowly becoming one of my favorite players. I mean, everything. Giannis is still number one. Isn't it weird to think about like the two best NBA players right now is Giannis Antetokounmpo and Jokic, and they're both European players. Isn't that kind of crazy? And I think that has a lot to do with the number one pick this year,
Yeah.
um, because they're European. But before we get into the draft, I just want to talk about the state of Florida real quick. The state of Florida this year has made it to almost every major championship game. The Miami Heat made it to the finals and lost. The Florida Panthers made it to the Stanley Cup and they lost. The Florida Atlantic Owls made it to the Final Four and they lost. The Miami Hurricane made it to the Final Four and they lost. And the Florida Gators made it to the College World Series and they lost. So when we're talking about what's in the water in Louisiana, like I guess there's no clutch gene in Florida right now because they do not know how to win the big game. But for all those teams in the state of Florida, being a fan and like imagine you're a fan of every single one of those teams and seeing them get that far, that's got to be an incredible feeling. But you got to imagine the heartbreak of all of these games going the wrong direction for a lot of these fans.
It's one of those things. It's like how excited can you be to get to all the championship games, but not win any of the championship games? Like we felt with the Iowa women's basketball team. Like getting there, super awesome, super happy. But let's say we got there like 5 times and didn't win a single time. Like at some point, like are you still super content with getting there? Or are you starting to get a little annoyed that you're not making just that one more game step?
Well, and then it comes to like the age-old question, like hypothetical Chicago Bears. If for the next 50 years they went to 25 NFC Championship games, they went to 25. That means two every 3 years. They went to 25 NFC Championship games. Would you? But they never won a Super Bowl in the next 50 years. Or do you win one Super Bowl for the next 50 years, but and then you're the most average or below average team every other year? Which one would you take?
I I would probably want to get there still ultimately.
Yeah,
I mean, and this is going to get a little bit beyond like fandom per se. Like thinking not necessarily. I mean, as a fan, it's nice to get there too, but from a beyond a fan perspective, when you're thinking organization wise, it would be much more beneficial to your team and your organization as a whole to be making it there, making playoffs, playing in the Super Bowl despite losing, because you're bringing in a lot more revenue, you're keeping fans engaged, players want to be there because you're going to get those kind of players that want to make it into the next step. Um, so something about that low key long term success is a little better than like it's like who would you rather be? The guy that talked about the one super, arguably like Bears fans right now talking about 86, like best defense ever, like those 86 Bears, like that's cool, like
85.
85 Bears.
Yeah,
But like, or would you rather be the team that's just like, oh, we're always right there, we're always contenders, like we're such a good solid team. Like you got to go through us still if you want to be the champs. Because I think there's still some regard. If you're always the runners up, there's still something of a mindset of a if you want to be the best, you have to go through us first type of mentality. And I think
yeah.
there's still some good beneficial to that.
Which I think that's funny that you mentioned the Bears because that is that type of team that they won one in the last 50 years, and we own that. We love talking about the '85 Bears because that's what we got. We got the '85 Bears and we got the 2006 Bears. Those are the two teams that we got. In the 2006, we didn't even win the championship. We lost in the Super Bowl. But and then you got the other side of it, and I would relate that to the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are that team in the 90s that went to 4 Super Bowls and they never won one. And ever since Josh Allen came, here they are. They're always in the AFC divisional round, AFC championship. They are that organization that, they have that success and they have that pattern, but they never win the big one. So it's like, which one would you rather have? Would you rather have that one Super Bowl win back in 1985, or would you rather have that, um,
You
longevity
got to
that
win
you
the
would
big one
say?
at some point. I like if we're talking like in a
Yeah,
50-year span, yeah, every 50 years you got to get at least one win in the big one if you really really want to be super proud of your team. But like I would still want to be in the playoffs. I would still want to be contenders for at least 40 of those other 50 years because if you even if you get the big one once in a 50-year span and then you go back to mediocre or below average, you still can't be super proud of as a team. At that point, it's becoming like, all right,
yeah.
yeah, move on, kind of turn the page type talk.
I agree. And that kind of reminds me of the Seattle Seahawks. They're pretty much they're kind of like they're there every so often they're there. But they have won the big one in the last 50 years. But then they still are. People are scared of the Seattle Seahawks, even with Geno Smith and like them talking about him like being like this guy, and they were gonna be a downfall. They still made the playoffs. So yeah, I get where you're coming from. I'd rather be a Seahawks fan than a Bears or a Bills fan in that perspective.
Definitely. Um, let's get back on track a little bit. We're going to talk NBA draft here. So you mentioned first round, number one pick overall. I don't want to say his last name.
Wimben Yama. Wimben
Victor.
Yama.
I
I
think
think
you
that's
should. You still got to say his
Victor
first name. I just didn't want to pronounce his last name.
Wimben Yama. That's Victor Wimben Yama. He was drafted by the San Antonio Spurs out of the Metropolitan 92. He's the first European player to be drafted since 1995 in the first overall.
So Metropolitan 92. Explain that. What is that?
Okay, so Metropolitan 92, that's a European League professional sports team. So it's a part of the Euro League basketball league. So yeah, and it's kind of cool to kind of see these type of players from like it's not college basketball really. I mean, it's the Euro League, and seeing Victor Wembanyama go uh, number 1 overall. I mean, the reason he went, he's 7'4" and he plays like Kevin Durant. Like that's the reason he went. Like he's built like Kevin Durant, just taller. Like
It's interesting to think about that we so often, yeah, when you're thinking draft, you're thinking college. These guys coming out of college, ready to take it to the next level and moving on and whatnot. But should we be less shocked that teams want somebody who's already shown skill and prowess and success in basketball outside, like at the next level, arguably? Like, he's essentially, obviously, the NBA, I would say, is bigger than the European League, just as basketball is a little more popular sport here, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Make the argument you want, but would you not? He's already at the next level being successful. Why not just bring him to a different country to play at that arguably same next professional level? So, I don't know. I think it makes a lot of sense, like not necessarily drafting out of college and instead take the guy that already has the skill that's there.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, it does make sense. It's just not a common trend that we see in the NBA very often. Like it's always like a college basketball star or phenom that like performed at that college level because you could almost debate like college basketball in the United States is more of a professional league than a Euro league is.
I think Giannis and
Jokic.
Nick Jokic would have to argue a little bit with that, but
I agree because both those guys, like I mean, Jokic, you said it himself. He was drafted in the second round during a Taco Bell commercial, and then Giannis was drafted like 16th overall. Like he wasn't even like a top 10, top 15 player, and like you see these guys and they perform to the standard, and I think that comes back to why Victor Wembanyama got drafted. Number 1 is because Jokic and Giannis is setting that standard. It's kind of like the mobile quarterback, Michael Vick, set that standard in the NFL, and it progressed from there. And I think that's why you got players like Lamar. I think Jokic and Giannis, they are changing what basketball can be and what you can do. And that goes for another couple. We didn't even talk about the G
yep.
League either.
Before we get into this, I think to a degree, a part of it is obviously analysts, when they're looking at who they want to draft and stuff, are starting to look at the numbers. They're looking at the stats. But you have to take those stats and numbers in correlation with where you're playing, who you're playing for. Like when we were talking about the guys that the Bears drafted in our last episode, we were like, hey, we're going to have some biases here toward like SEC and Pac 12 guys. Like all conference SEC and all conference Pac 12 are two all conferences, but arguably carry a little bit different merits. So I think some of the issue, like you were just saying, is, oh, well, American college basketball is above professional basketball in Europe. That might be the mentality, but that might not necessarily be true. So some of the stats that we compare between our American college basketball players, we might glorify because we understand it. We know American basketball. We consume it. We're around it so much more. Whereas it's a little unknown exactly how that would compare to a European professional league. And I think guys like Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo are like starting to show some analysts a little bit that maybe this Euro professional league is a little more competitive with what you just said, like our college level, than we thought. They're giving it a little bit better idea of like, hey, the guys that have some pretty good stats over here might actually be really good, even if we brought them over here.
No, yeah, I think it brings like this sort of like professionalism from the EuroLeague. Being a professional at that stage already, they know what it takes to be a professional because there's a mass difference between, and you've probably seen it a little bit with the guys that are NFL players that have came in and some of the guys that, are at the University of Iowa right now. It's just two different people. Like you either got what it takes to be a professional and you can make it, or you can learn what it takes to be a professional, or you become a bust or like some sort of that way. And I think that's why there's that big emphasis right now on the Euro League because that is a professional sports league. They know how to be a professional.
there's
They
there's
know the
just a maturity difference there. Like, yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Like there is a maturity difference between, like I said, the guys at Iowa. Like we see them as like, I don't want to say bigger than they are per se, but like they're college kids. Like they're dudes in
yeah.
college. A great example of this: second round pick in the NBA draft here, Brandon Miller, Alabama, college guy. Go ahead and explain what's going on with him.
Yeah, no. So he was suspended for a good 15 games this past season at Alabama because, like, he's a college kid. He made a stupid mistake with a gun charge. He got, charged with a gun charge. He was arrested. And that just goes back to what you mentioned, a maturity thing. Like, you don't have that aspect. You don't understand. And we're seeing it with John Morant in the NBA right now. And, like, his gun charges that he's had. He's so young, but he's one of the best players in the NBA, like, but he's gonna find himself out of the league if he doesn't get shit figured out. Or Zion Williamson, like these guys, they don't know what it takes to be a professional, and I think that's a lot of the reason why Brandon Miller, especially with the gun charge, he fell to number two, and he wasn't the number one player in the draft. And of course, the Charlotte Hornets took a risk on him, but we'll see what happens with that. But it also makes sense. The next three guys in the G League that were picked up: Scoot Henderson, Amin Thompson, and Asor Thompson. Scoot Henderson was drafted by the Portland Trailblazer. Amin Thompson was drafted by the Houston Rockets, and Asor Thompson was drafted by the Detroit Pistons. They were all part of the G League. And the reason, and this is the first time that's ever happened, three guys in the top, well, four if you want to, four guys in the top five picks didn't even play college basketball. They didn't even play college basketball. They bypassed college basketball altogether. And yeah, G League similar probably to the Euro League. That's the way I look at the G League. Second tier professional sports team. It's like a minor league system for the NBA, but they learn a different type of professionalism instead of focusing on studies like a lot of the college guys have to do on this aspect. They're just focused on how to be a professional athlete.
Yeah, which that is an interesting dynamic that you bring up, because even when we talk about college kids and like these college leagues and whatnot, it's very forgetful sometimes that like they got classes,
Yeah.
like they're getting degrees right now, like they're in school. Um, Whereas, yeah, these G League guys or these Euro League guys, their life is basketball. They're
Yep.
arguably getting a competitive edge in a basketball sense, not in like a worldly academic sense or anything, obviously, but in a basketball sense, they arguably are getting a little bit more of an edge because their study, their post practice activities, their weekends, it's studying film, it's studying basketball, it's working on their skills and everything. They don't have to deal with these other external things going on, which could be beneficial to some of them. So it is interesting seeing that the first five picks minus one are all somewhat professional guys. I know. What are your feelings about that as far as the NBA draft goes and just the standard structure or like organization of it from college to NBA versus these G League guys and everything else going on?
Yeah, and my feelings with it is like I hear a lot of people saying it's hurting college basketball, which it is. I think it is hurting college basketball because four out of the five guys, like imagine Victor Wembanyama, like playing in college basketball. He would have been the best player. He would have been the best player all around. And some of these other guys, like these guys were 5-star athletes. So like I feel like it is hurting college basketball in that sort of way. But I think it is beneficial because not everybody can be a college student. Not everybody can have that like college, like not everybody's book smart. There's a lot of people that are just like real life smart out there or really good at what they do. And basketball, if that's what they want to do, it's I feel like in a weird way, it's no different than like someone joining the military right out of high school or someone, going into that aspect of things because like at a certain point, the G League, that's going to mature you. You're going to be around guys that are 26, 27, like-minded people that are all trying to reach that. Either they're trying to like hold on to that last glimmer of hope of their like NBA career or their future in the playing basketball, or they're gonna like be hungry trying to learn every aspect of it. And I think that's why the minor league system in baseball is like so important. And I think that's why the NBA and the G League, it's becoming this overall grand scheme of things that people like. So I think, yeah, it hurts college basketball, but I think it's beneficial for these type of players.
Definitely. And I like the comparison you brought up with baseball's minor league system and stuff, because college baseball obviously is still a pretty huge thing. So I don't think necessarily having these picks coming from G leagues and everything, and it's to some degree just another level. Like if we're talking minor leagues, I don't know all the specific like names and organizations to them, but I know there's like a tier scheme. There's like the MLB, Major League, and there's like a minor. I know it goes down. So maybe this is just kind of the same with the NBA is coming. There is the NBA, then you have the G League, then EuroLeague, then college, like whatever. It's just kind of a tiered system that's working into this overall basketball as a sport. Um, One thing that I couldn't help but think about with mentioning the all these G League players and everything getting drafted, being a football podcast and such a football mindseted kind of person, especially with as much as we've talked about the XFL and USFL this year, is could football potentially be heading more and more in this direction? Do you think we'll start seeing some NFL teams be picking more drafts out of the XFL or USFL leagues compared to college?
Yeah, and I think, it's still years down the line, because it did take basketball for the G League to be a successful thing about 15 to 20 years. It's been around since the early 90s. And so, like, I think, in that aspect, of course, I mean, Euro's always been a thing, right? Like, there's always been players, whether first or second round picks, that have came out of the Euro League. But for the G League specifically, it took a good 20, 30 years. I don't know right now. I know there's some big names that have been picked up from the XFL as free agents. Like Hakeem Butler, he was the St. Louis Battlehawk, he the former Cyclone, Iowa State Cyclone. He just signed a big contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's going to be a wide receiver for the Steelers now. And Ben DiNucci, he was one of the leading passers in the XFL this year for the Seattle Dragons, and he just signed a contract with the Denver Broncos to compete for the second string backup quarterback position. So I don't know necessarily if people will get drafted out of the XFL or USFL, but I do think there is that second opportunity. You ball out there, you come in, let's see if you can get a contract or make the team with the NFL professional team.
And that does raise a good question. I don't know if this is a dumb question or something on my part, but what is that difference between per se being drafted and signed as a free agent? Because can a G League player not get just casually signed on with an NBA team? Is that like an organizational difference, or like what is this argument between drafted versus just signed from a lower level? Like how would that look?
Right. So, in that, I'm glad you brought that up, because, so we all know who Gabe Vincent is, right? Miami Heat sprung on scene, especially during the playoffs. He was a stud in the playoffs. He was Jimmy Butler's right-hand man. Gabe Vincent was in the G League. He was originally drafted in the NBA. I can't remember what team he was drafted, like pick 57th. Got cut. He was a two-way player for a little bit. And then he went to the G League, and then he balled out at the G League. Miami gave him that contract. So I think if you were originally drafted or you've played in the NBA at all, you are not draft eligible in the G League. But if you came right out of high school and you went straight into the G League, then you are eligible to be drafted. So I think that's kind of the aspect of where it is.
But I mean, from going to G League to NBA, like what, like could these teams have not picked somebody else with their draft pick and signed one of these G League players like later on as a free agent? Like why use a draft pick on them versus just signing them to the team after the fact?
I think it's because who wants to play for the Portland Trail Blazers right now? Think about it. Who wants to play for the Houston Rockets? Who wants to play for the Detroit Pistons?
So drafting is more mandatory. Like, hey, we drafted you, you're obligated to.
Exactly. Yep. Like, these are the aspects. Like, these guys, they Scoot Henderson, he could have signed with the LA Lakers, or like a more prominent, like known franchise instead of going to the Trailblazers. So like I feel like it's like risk or reward. Like, hey, I really want Scoot Henderson on this team. Let's just take him at 3. We know he's the third best player eligible in this draft. Let's just take him here. And then he is required to be a Trailblazer for 4 years because that's the rookie contract. And then you have this guy for at least 4 years. And it makes a lot of sense at that side of things.
I suppose that does make a lot more sense. In my head, I was thinking about it as like, if I'm in the G League and an NBA team wants me to play for that, like, why would I say no to any NBA team? Like, I'm playing in the G League right now. Like, I don't care if it is the worst team in the NBA. If I go to the next level, that's the next level, isn't it? Like, shouldn't I want that? But I mean, on some regards, I get no. You might not want that. You might rather be super successful in the G League, which kind of raises that question. I know we've talked about before, or not us specifically on the pod, but everyone throws around the age-old question: would you rather be a part of a wildly successful team while sitting on the bench most of the time, or would you rather be on kind of a dumpy team that doesn't win a lot, but you're on the field like every game for most of the game? It's kind of that argument of like, which would you rather have? So, same thing. Would you rather be at a lower level and playing all the time, winning a lot, or at a higher level but you suck?
Right. 100%. And so like that's that big atmosphere with it. Speaking of the two of the picks, we talked about Scoot Henderson quite a bit, but Amin Thompson and Asur Thompson, brothers. They are brothers, and they played on the Overtime Elite, and they went back to back, 4th pick and the 5th pick. Amin went to the Houston Rockets, and Asur went to the Detroit Pistons. And just seeing brothers go in the top 5 back to back is really cool because like brothers make sports even more fun, especially at a professional level. Travis Kelce, Jason Kelce, we got 2 brothers that we'll mention here. But these brothers, like just seeing both of them make it, their mom and dad have to be so freaking proud. Like both of them made it to the league. And we'll see how they do because like, I think it'll be interesting, like atmosphere, like family function, be like, both brothers kind of playing in the league. So.
It arguably brings in the question of what I was saying, like the genetics just versus like the skill as a player, like all these brothers that all make leagues and stuff, is it not just genetics? Can you not just like automatically assume that like, oh yeah, they're in because like this is their family? I think to some degree yes, but I also think to some degree when you grow up in the same household, like those skills are going to be passed on as well. Like like all of the, we'll get into our basketball brothers, Keegan and Chris Murray. Like, there's no reason that Keegan Murray is going to have these basketball skills that Chris isn't, because Chris is in the same household, grew up with Keegan, probably practicing all the same stuff, doing all the same things. And now Chris Murray drafted first round, somewhat surprisingly to me. Don't hate on me if anyone else expected him to go first round. I am not sure I did. But yeah, first round went to the Portland Trailblazers. That's 3 Iowa players drafted in the past 3 years, which is kind of awesome to see.
Yeah, seeing Chris and Keegan both get drafted. Keegan definitely in the top 5 last year. Like that's incredible. And Luka Garza even went in the 2nd round 3 years ago. Like seeing those 3 guys go in the past 3 years, we got a little bit of reputation now as a basketball school. I feel like with these guys going because they're like, well, hey, Iowa has produced 3 players that have gotten drafted in the last 3 years. And you got to think each year it was the star of our teams. Like each year, like Luka Garza was like the soul of our team. Yeah, Keegan was there, but he was still learning. And then last year, Chris was learning from Keegan. And then now here it is, Chris. Like, and so I'm excited to see who could be that breakout player next year that could go in the draft. It definitely probably won't be in the first round, of course, like Chris or Keegan. But I am surprised at Chris because, like, we've mentioned it. Like, we both like Chris Murray, of course. But he did not perform well when it came to games that mattered. Unlike Keegan. Keegan performed in games that matter. Same with Luka Garza. But it'll be interesting to see him pair up with actually Scoot Henderson and the Portland Trailblazers. They got a young nucleus there that it's going to be interesting to see.
And that is one thing. That is one thing that probably skewed my perception of um, Chris going in the first round. Is just Iowa's season with Chris Murray as the head guy wasn't as successful, you might think, as Keegan's, mostly due to the Big Ten tournament. The biggest accomplishment I can think of for Iowa as a team is the Big Ten tournament champions Keegan's year, whereas they weren't under Chris Murray. But at the same time, they still, outside of that tournament, they had good records. They got into March Madness. Both of them were out in the first round of March Madness. So, I mean, well, was Keegan out in the first round, or did they make it one round past?
No, he made it to round of 32.
Okay, so they went one round past. So slightly better still there, but still super pumped that he went first round. Who's left on the roster right now? Who do you think is going to be the guy that's going to go next year? Because I'm trying. We graduated Connor McCaffrey. He's actually coaching.
Does Caitlin Clark count?
No, but she definitely is going somewhere.
Let's see. That's hard, man. Tony Perkins.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
I was saying probably not a first round guy, but a second round guy. He'd be a good rotation guy in the NBA. I mean, he plays hard. He plays quick. I mean, I think Tony Perkins could be that next guy.
I know I've said it before. I absolutely love Tony Perkins. He is one of my favorite guys on the team. I think he easily becomes our next stud for this upcoming year, pending maybe some insane commit that we have or something.
Right. Or, another guy I think maybe could be Peyton Sandfort. I mean, he's got NBA size, 6'7", 215. I think he could, come out of the gate and kind of take that role that Chris and Keegan played the last couple of years, and they could run the offense through Peyton Sandfort. So
potentially.
Yeah, potentially on that, because he came off the bench. He could hit the three. I think, he could be that guy, especially if he puts the work in this offseason.
I think that's the key right there, is putting in the work. I think he still has a little bit more to develop, a little further to go than maybe like Tony Perkins. But I think Tony Perkins has been contributing, I don't want to say more heftily per se, but in my mind, he does more or is better equipped for the team the past couple of years compared to Sandfort. But Sandfort definitely is coming into that role. He definitely has a big contribution. And obviously with Keegan and Chris both gone now, we're going to have to see if that contribution is going to truly grow, maybe to being the biggest player on the team, but we will see. But we've been talking a lot of basketball, and as we've mentioned, this is a football podcast, so we will get into our main bread and butter here with Bear Necessities. First thing going on, Father's Day was recent, and now that Aaron Rodgers is gone and the Packers are being headed by Jordan Love decided to tell the Bears fans Happy Father's Day, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, because in that regard, he's calling us father, not the other way around. So one, that was just a dumb thing to say. Two, Jordan Love has not beaten the Bears. Have we lost to Jordan Love at all? Like being the game starter at all, like in a Packers game?
Nope.
Yeah.
Here, I want to play the video because it's hilarious. Every time I hear it.
All the Bears fans out there, go Pack Go. Happy Father's Day to.
Happy Father's Day to all the Bears fan out there. Go Pack Go. Okay. Let's unearth this a little bit. Jordan Love, you're a dumbass. I'm sorry. I hate to say that. Coming from a true Bears fan, the Bears, you're not Aaron Rodgers. Like you mentioned, he's not Aaron Rodgers. I don't give a fuck if Aaron Rodgers owned us. I don't care if he said he's our daddy. I don't care about that. That's fine. Aaron Rodgers, he's not in our division anymore. I could care less. He's a New York Jet. Jordan Love, I can't wait till September 10th. Because I can't wait to see what the Bears can do to you. Because, one, I've seen the reports coming out of OTAs in Green Bay. They're not looking promising, bud. I don't know what's going on, man. I don't think you have no right to say that to Chicago Bears. And one, you fucked it up if you were trying to say you are our dad. Like, you fucked it up completely because you're not our dad, one, and you said we are your dad. Well, we'll make you our dad. So, like, I think it's just so stupid, man. It's such a stupid thing to even come out and say. I don't know where he was going with
I've
that.
talked to a couple Packers fans in my internship, and they are just as delusional as I regretfully want to say like Bears fans are or have been the past couple of years. Like thinking, oh, it's the Jordan Love era. Like, yeah, Rodgers sat under Favre, and now Jordan Love sat under Rodgers, and now it's Love's turn. Like, y'all, we've seen this man play before. It ain't good. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know what you're
no,
expecting to happen, but the Packers are not about to have some amazing playoff berth era under Jordan Love. Like, I'm sorry, but he's got a long way to go, I think, before he's actually going to be, if he's going to be successful for the Packers.
imagine having 30 years of Hall of Fame quarterback play and only 2 Super Bowls to prove for it.
That gets into our argument of do you want to be in contention every year and never win it, or
Yeah,
not be in contention but win it once.
16 years with Aaron Rodgers and 14 years with Brett Favre. And they won 2 Super Bowls under each of those quarterbacks. And I don't see another 15 years with Jordan Love for the Green Bay Packers. I think their time in our division is finally over. And I think going to Chicago, I think we have that shot finally to overtake the division. And that's hard to even say too because Detroit, but I think we have a better shot than Green Bay does.
Definitely. I think we come back on top of the most career wins that we gave up this. I think it was this past season that we lost that um, record or streak or whatever you want to call it. I think we're going to gain that back this year. But speaking of the Bears specifically a little more, let's get into the Bears OTAs. So, first questions first, I want to discuss is our receiving core. We actually have one now. In fact, we have enough receivers that more than likely some, if not, or one of them, if not a couple of them, are probably going to be cut. So I want to go through who do we think is going to be, as of right now, our starting receiving core. Obviously, I think DJ Moore is our number one.
Oh, yeah.
No one can argue with that. He's obviously the biggest name on here right now. His connection with Fields during OTAs has been good. I don't think we have to worry too much about DJ Moore. Hopefully, we see a good season out of him. Darnell Mooney was our number one, should not have been our number one, but arguably isn't a bad receiver.
No.
What do you think?
Yeah, like you said, DJ Moore solidified number one receiver, number one target for Justin Fields, of course. But Darnell Mooney, you're right. He never should have been our number one receiver. I like Darnell Mooney still. I don't know if he'll be a Bear for the next couple of years, like when his contract ends in 2 years. We'll see what happens as free agency hits. But I think coming into the year, I think he'll be an okay number two. He's still not kind of that number two that I would want. Like, I would rather have Darnell Mooney. He reminds me a lot of Tyler Boyd in the Cincinnati Bengals. I think he would be that great number three, and he'd be great at that being a number three. Because he's kind of that quick, speedy guy that's, perfect as a possession receiver in the slot. So, like, him being a number two, still not the ideal position, but I think he is number two, and he'll have a lot more production this year. I think we'll see him as a 1,000-yard receiver finally back again because DJ Moore is going to get most of the attention from the number one corners and number one DBs on other teams. So I'm excited for that aspect to see what can Darnell Mooney actually do when he's not getting double teamed and like faced with like the number one corner on every single team every year, because he did show potential last year. Like him and Justin Fields, they did have a little bit of a rhythm going, especially at the end of the year. So I'm excited to see. I think he's like extremely talented guy. I just like he was getting overshadowed by the position that the Chicago Bears front office put him in.
And it's the argument I know I've made before on this podcast is one great receiver is cool, but you need two solid receivers to actually upset a defense. You put one receiver on a field, I don't care how good they are, but like they're going to get covered. Like other receivers are going to get ignored. Everyone's going to flock to that guy. They're going to be eyes on that guy. And it's going to be hard to get him the ball for anybody. But you bring a couple guys out there and give that defense having to look a couple different directions or making sure they're maintaining coverage on the entire field, not just this one half of the field. And things get much more significantly difficult for them to stop the pass. So I think even bringing DJ Moore in is going to help Darnell Mooney also rise. They're going to rise together. It's not like Moore is going to come in, take his spot, and be the big name. He, to a degree, is, but they're going to work with each other, and both of their numbers are going to be significantly up just because now we have two solid receivers on the field. Secondly, not only do we have those two, but Tyler Scott, man drafted by our GM, is top rookie performer right now. He found Tyreek Hill. He found Tyler Scott. Tyler Scott's performing in OTAs. I like where this is heading. I like the imagery of it.
Yeah, and this is the reason I said that I don't know how long Darnell Mooney will be a Chicago Bear, because this is a similar type of guy. Tyler Scott, they play pretty similar. We got three guys that play pretty similar. Darnell Mooney, Tyler Scott, and Velus Jones. All three of those guys are similar type guys. And Tyler Scott ran a 4.3 40-yard dash. That's quick. That's a burner in the 40. I know 40, blah, blah, blah. You don't like me talking specifically.
I have to point this out just because I forget who of. Oh, I think it was Iowa's old. One of the things of our internship is we have to watch a bunch of different videos that were recorded by the old head strength and conditioning coach, Chris Doyle.
Yeah.
And he's in one of the speed training videos and stuff, he specifically talks about how a 40-yard dash time is to a good chunk irrelevant to how a football player is going to be. So just hearing that, I immediately thought of our conversation of like, why do you care so much about 40s? They barely matter. But
yeah, well, and so Tyler Scott, yeah, I think him like building that connection right now, he's going to see field. He's going to see the field as a rookie, and he's going to probably see it a decent amount, especially with, outperforming some other guys. I think he's going to be fun. Like, I don't know if he's going to be like that number 2, number 3 guy right away this year, but I could see him, like, if injuries happen or occur or players just don't perform well, I could see him filling in that role by the end of the season. So, yeah, I'm excited for that one. The next guy, though, I am not very excited for is Chase Claypool. What are your thoughts on Chase Claypool, man?
I don't know. I never really was super stoked when he came to the Bears in the first place. Like, it was nice to get a recognizable name as a receiver in a group that we just did not have good receivers in. But now that we have some of these other guys, like we have DJ Moore, we have Tyler Scott, who's hopefully going to be good. We have Velus Jones, who is currently in OTAs outshining everyone else below him outside of DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney. But so yeah, I've never been super, super excited about Chase Claypool coming. I liked him in a time of need to maybe help do some things for us, which I'm not sure he necessarily did. So
right.
If we ended up cutting him or letting him go, I don't have any issues with it. I'm not going to be upset. If we end up keeping him, that's fine too. I don't think we play him a ton with some of the other guys that we have in right now. If anything, he becomes a big run blocking type receiver. We might use him in the run game more than we do in any of our true passing game. But I don't know. I have no ties to Claypool right now on the Bears.
I agree. I mean, the only thing I'm frustrated about is he's our only big receiver, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, besides DJ Moore. DJ Moore, he's big. And St. Brown, of course. But St. Brown, I'm never going to say he's like a starting quality receiver. He's a great run blocker. But Chase Claypool, he's 6'4" and 240. 6'4" and 240, you should be more physical than you produce on the field. And he does not. He plays very soft for being that big at receiver. And that's what kills me is like plays so soft. He needs to let this physicality out. Like, and he drops a lot of balls too. And that's the hard part with it. And the worst part of all of it, he has no work ethic. Like, this is the aspect that I know you've mentioned this work ethic. It's a huge thing. Chase Claypool, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't got work ethic, like you're not going to be that successful in anything you do, and that's what's killing us, Chicago. Like, and it sucks because we gave up a second round pick for this guy, and essentially we traded him for Roquan Smith. Remember that. Like, that's the ideal of what happened when it came down to the nitty gritty of the trade. We traded him for Roquan Smith, and that we got robbed. And if he's off the Bears this offseason, he doesn't make it through training camp, he doesn't make it through OTAs, even if he makes it through this year, and he only has, last year he had 46 receptions for 451 yards and 1 TD. That's it. Like, that's not a starting receiver production, not even as a wide receiver 1 or 2. That's like a wide receiver 4 production. I just don't see it happening. He doesn't fit what Matt Eberflus is building in Chicago for culture-wise as a coach. He doesn't fit what Ryan Poles has building in Chicago. So I think, as a time of need, I think it was a great opportunity to maybe take a risk or maybe a flyer. But we also gave up the number 32 pick for this guy, which was technically a first-round pick.
Definitely. Like I said, I could honestly take it or leave it either way. He is one of our bigger receivers that could potentially help in some blocking, but we do have Equanimeous St. Brown, who could potentially do that too, or DJ Moore can hopefully be helpful there. But if we cut him, I'm not going to be upset. If we keep him, it'll be whatever, because I don't think he'll see the field all that much.
Right.
My only issue would be if we kept him and he was consistently playing over DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Tyler Scott. If he was consistently playing over any one of those guys, then I might be having some issues with it if he's not performing as well. But ultimately, I don't know. I'm just waiting to see what happens with him. Velus Jones, like we said, is starting to shine a little bit. I think he might be a good rotational backup, or maybe even fighting for that number 3 spot. I think we're pretty solidified that DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney are number 1 and number 2. The real question is who's going to be the number 3. Who's our third guy? And we've got Claypool, Velus Jones, Equanimeous St. Brown, and Dante Pettis, and Tyler Scott.
Yeah.
So the real question is, out of those, 5? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, out of those 5, who takes the spot? Who gets that official starting as a number 3 guy?
And I think right now it's going to be Velus Jones. I mean, to start the year, him coming out, shining. I know he had a lot of troubles as a rookie, but it was his rookie year. Give him some slack. He was learning how to be a pro. He's also a burner. I think one thing with this is he can teach Tyler Scott his rookie year. He's like, hey man, I sucked my rookie year. Like, I came out and I was just not that great. And this is how you become a professional. Like, we've talked about this podcast. This is how you become a professional. And he's going to lean on guys like that. And Darnell Mooney, he's going to teach him the in and out. Darnell's been a Bear for about 4 years now. I think Velus Jones will be able to take that number 3 spot. Who do you think?
I like the thoughts of Velus Jones coming out and being in that number 3 spot, just because, like you said, still pretty similar between him and Tyler Scott. I don't see a lot of differences there as far as experience goes, outside of Velus Jones was on the team, but game-wise, they truly have the same technical experience levels. Jones' main issue, too, is, in our punt return game, kind of muffing a couple punts. I don't think he was on the field enough as a receiver to truly exhibit much of what he has or anything like that. So assuming he's gotten his hands a little bit under control and whatnot, I think he's a good choice to start. I think he rotates heavy with Tyler Scott. I think definitely our number 3 guy. I don't know if we're going to have a true number 3 guy. I think it's going to be a big rotation based on what we're doing, just trying to get guys reps, get guys experience, and grow both of them a little bit to be better players.
Well, it depends on the situation too. Like, if you're down within the 20-yard line in the red zone, I think you're not even gonna have that guy on like Velus Jones or Tyler Scott. That's when a Chase Claypool or a St. Brown come in.
Yeah.
Because you want that big body guy in the red zone as a red zone threat. So I could see those guys at that time, being there. And then Dante Pettis, I don't think Velus Jones will ever be a kick returner or punt returner again. Just after last year and all the mess that he created again for us, when he is a rookie, we'll let it go. I mean, we were 3-14 anyways. Who cares? But Dante Pettis, man, he'll always have a spot on our roster because he's just a great special teams player. Like, he's never going to be a top receiver or like even a receiver on the field unless we are really hurting and like injuries and stuff like that. But Dante Pettis, like he's just a great special teams player, and you need that on a team. Like, people forget about that a lot, like when you're looking at position. Yeah, he might be labeled a receiver, but he's a Swiss Army knife. That's what he is. Like, he can be a gunner on punt team, kick team, he can be a kick returner. He's just a specialist, and like that's why I like Dante Pettis.
And didn't we sign somebody that is, I think they're technically a running back, but they're mostly known for their punt returns or kick returns.
Travis Homer.
Yeah, Travis Homer. So we've got our return game. We don't need Willis Jones to have to worry about being back there anymore. We brought in a couple guys that can get that job done plenty for us there. So I'm just excited to see what any of these guys do. I'm excited to see how our passing game in general is going to improve. And speaking of that passing game, let's get into the other aspect of it here. Justin Fields, is he going to be a good passing quarterback? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, we saw a lot of running. I wouldn't call him a bad quarterback or anything. We know he can run the ball, but is he going to improve his passing game with this new receiving core? What do you think?
Yeah, well, and like a lot of the reports are coming out, his connection with DJ Moore is great right now. Chemistry is getting built. The one thing with that is it just DJ Moore? Is he going to just look for DJ Moore, and if that's not there, he takes down and runs? Or is he going to finally trust Cole Kmet? Is he going to try to Robert Tonyan? Is he going to try to trust Darnell Mooney? And throughout, which, I mean, we mentioned too, he built chemistry with Darnell, so I'm not too worried about that, but we didn't see chemistry with Cole Kmet. Not very often. And Cole Kmet, he's on a budding tight end right now. Like, I think he could become a star, especially under Robert Tonyan's tutelage. So, but Justin, I mean, there's a lot of quotes coming out about TJ Edwards saying you see similarities between Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts, and that he thinks he's going to be a star. And Lord, I hope so. I really hope so. Like, as Bears fans, we sit back and we see all this potential in the world of Justin Fields. We see what he can be. But we also know the other side of that, being Bears fans. We've had Jay Cutler. We've had Jim McMahon. We went through a list of top 3 quarterbacks. Mitch Trubisky was number 5 on that list. And that's the sad reality of being a Chicago Bears fan, because here's Justin Fields getting MVP preseason voting right now. And I'm like, whoa, slowly your roll, man. He's a Chicago Bear.
We also have the big stigma of can an Ohio State quarterback be successful in the league? That is a big thing that everyone has talked about too. I know I've heard it from some of the guys. Just, he's an Ohio State quarterback. Ohio State quarterbacks have not panned out well in the NFL. So is Justin Fields all hype still? It's hard to say. It's hard to say year in and year out, oh, this is make or break. This is a make or break. I always got 3 years now, make or break. But in the run game, he has drastically improved. We know he can run, and that's a big similarity with Jalen Hurts. I think that's where that big similarity comes in. They're bigger guys. They run the ball super well. They can use their feet. The next aspect is we just need to get his passing game down. Now that we have a receiving core that can catch the ball, that can open up the field, now that he's another year in, another year experienced, he's read these defenses 1 year more, I think his passing game starts to come in to play a little bit. I think he's understanding NFL defenses better. I think he has guys to throw to that are capable of getting open. And hopefully he won't just have to rely on his legs and, run away immediately. Hopefully he does take a little longer to look for an open guy and start moving the ball around a little bit. I'm slightly skeptical of it. I'm not completely married to the idea that he's going to be a Jalen Hurts MVP all-star type quarterback quite yet, but I'm very, very hopeful. I think we're trending in the right direction with him.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to touch on what you said. You're hopeful that we're trending in the right direction, and I'm skeptical, right? I'm skeptical too. And it's all the outside media that is putting that on him. It's not even Chicago Bears fans. It's not. It's not Chicago Bears fans. We just want good quarterback play. And if that means you're just, like a Alex Smith type passer and you can just lead us down the field, dink and dunks, or even like maybe one big play down, like big play a game, and you can just keep us in the game. And even if you're just like average, you're an average passer, but you can do all this great potential in the run game. We're fine with that, Justin Fields. Like, we are fine with that. Even if you're number 15th in the league, you're in the top 15 quarterbacks. You're not 10. You're number 15. You're like a Jimmy Garoppolo type career. You'll go down as the best Chicago Bears quarterback to ever play in a Chicago Bears uniform, because that's how terrible our quarterbacks have been in our franchise history. And even if you win us one Super Bowl in your 15, 17-year career, like, you'll go down as great and you'll be loved in Chicago for the rest of your life. And that's kind of the aspect that I see. I don't want a flashy Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. I don't need it. I just want a quarterback that I can say, Justin can get the job done. He can win the big game. Like, I don't care if he, struggles and he throws 25 touchdowns to 17 interceptions. Who cares? You get the job done and you can win games when it counts, like we couldn't do last year. That's all that we want as Chicago Bears fans.
And that'll be the biggest seed of progression right there. Is we were one of those teams, like I mentioned earlier in the pod, like when it comes down to the close games, do you win them? Or can you make a push? Can you compete in those close games and not just win the ones you're supposed to win? That'll be the biggest difference that we're hoping to see. Because what did we say our record would have been if we would have won every game that was a one-score difference or whatever? It was like 9 and 8.
Or 9 and 8, 10 and 7.
Something like that. So, like, if that's the one big area that we need to prove it, we're right there on the edge. If we can just get Justin Fields confident, comfortable, and like you said, consistent, that's all we need. We need a consistent quarterback that can, like, pull it through in the close game. I completely agree. We don't need, like, a huge number one Jalen Hurts type quarterback. We just need a top pack guy that's going to come get the job done.
Yeah, and that people love, because like the team right now, like, there's nothing but great leadership stuff that comes about Justin Fields. And I like that, because like you didn't really see that with Jay Cutler. You didn't see that with Mitch as much. I mean, so like to see because a quarterback is a true leadership position. And I feel like to have that guy that can settle people down, like the way Justin Fields is like kind of made out to be, like that gives you kind of that calming feeling. And I really hope that is the difference between everything. So I really hope he is going to perform up to the standards, but there's a lot of hype on him right now. And it's,
it makes
it's kind of scary.
It makes me nervous. Especially coming on the pod and giving our opinions, like it's very hard to say once again, like, like Fields is going to make huge strides, and then like sit there and worry, like, dear God, is he going to make good strides? I really hope so, because I just hope so. But that's all the time we've got for you guys today. We will be back again early August, either that first weekend before, weekend after. The Bears' first preseason game is August 12th. We will definitely have an episode out before that preseason game happens. That much is for sure.
And once that episode happens, before the first preseason, we'll be back to our weekly episodes during the regular preseason.
Once we come back again, that'll be back to the normal. We're going to start doing weekly episodes.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, guys. And I just got 2 words to say. Beardown!